actually argue in favor of or against pornography. I'm just here to identify factors in a theory that I'm attempting to compose to explain how pornography gets recategorized into mainstream popular culture. So as I stated, the bulk of my theory is based on a theory that I've attempted to compose called Re-categorization, and it relies on 4 different factors: discourse, legitimization, prestige, and redefinition. Starting with discourse, over the course of my research, which has been based mostly on comparative analysis and media analysis, I found that discourse has generally been generated in the past through politics, moralistic arguments, and the agendas of special interest groups. Classically, these discourses have been generated with the agenda of trying to basically turn people off of pornography and to even have it banned and completely done away with. Similarly to Michel Foucault's work in the history of sexuality, more specifically his repressive theory, when discourses are generated for the purpose of turning somebody off of a phenomenon, it tends to cause a re-examination within the population in question. And a lot of the times they end up talking about the opposite of what the discourse is intended to generate, causing a Foucauldian counter effect. I have identified evidence of Foucauldian counter effects in anti-pornography discourses throughout my work. You couple this with the recent rise in access to pornography, mainly via web pornography, where people can anonymously and in the safety of their own home experiment with the usage of pornographic content and have a wide access to a huge variety of different pornography. People tend to put a little bit more stock in those re-examinations because they are personally experiencing the effects of pornography on them. This allows for a whole new set of different interpretations on pornographic content. Once prestige is once discourses are generated, the next step is legitimization. One argument or another generally becomes more legitimized. Arguments in favor of pornography have been classically legitimized through their economic contributions. As we know, pornography is a very, very profitable product and industry. So economic contributions are usually seen through revenue generated as well as employment within the companies that produce pornography, as well as the various economic contributions made in the wider picture, mainly in America, because a lot of the porn producers operate as legally operating businesses, meaning that they have to pay their licensing dues, they have to pay their taxes, and so on and so forth. And this overall does generate an economy in North America. Another form of legitimization comes from their characteristic similarity to mainstream film. With the increased access to pornography and the amount of people who are able to access it and experience it for themselves, porn stars have actually been able to achieve a mainstream celebrity status of sorts. Names such as Jenna Jameson, and Ron Jeremy have become household names despite their participation in the pornography industry. Also, you can't ignore that when it comes to film production, despite the content of the film, production practices and techniques are very, very similar, meaning that film production, no matter which industry, tend to be married to each other in some way. But the main focus on legitimization in my thesis actually comes from amateurism. Again, web pornography has actually changed the face of this industry greatly by allowing people not only to freely access it on a much, much wider scale, but also people can determine if they wish to participate in it. They freely and voluntarily pursue participation in pornography due to technological advances in cheap production techniques, home video technology, and video streaming, which can be put onto the internet live or videos available for downloadable content is available on the internet as well. What amateurism does is extremist arguments that claim inherent harms caused by pornography and the participants in pornography are inherently forced. And I know that there are very, very good concrete arguments where they are actually able to highlight cases where this happened, but I'm talking about extremist arguments where they claim that these are inherently the case. Those arguments tend to become very, very problematic when you introduce amateur porn, because it is people who have become interested in it of their own accord and have actually pursued this participation. Further to legitimization, we have prestige, similar to the theories of Frickel and Gross, which were published in 2005, claiming general factors in theories about scientific and intellectual movement. Gaining prestige is a major, major portion of getting any sort of movement or changes in thinking to move forward. What happens is that when legitimacy is recognized, it starts to gain supporters. If the supporters are held in a high enough regard in society, what happens is that endorsement from these supporters lends a certain prestige to it, and it changes the way that we think about that industry and its products. Prestige ultimately breeds popularity. One case that I've actually highlighted throughout my thesis where prestige has greatly helped move the porn industry along and helped its growth was in 1972 with the case of a high-production pornographic film called Deep Throat, starring Linda Lovelace. What happened was this film shared many characteristic similarities to mainstream films, as it carried a plot, had a written script, and the performers were recognized as actors. The film was shown in theaters in the 70s, and despite protests and some difficulties in getting the film out there, it was widely celebrated and continues to be this day. And its celebration is in part due to endorsements from A-list celebrities who enjoyed the film, such as Warren Beatty and Jack Nicholson. The final stage of the recategorization comes when the phenomenon is redefined. What happens, what I mean by this is there's a redefinition applied to the content where it's no longer considered pornography and is moved into a different realm when, in this case, actually starts to become inserted in popular culture. The reason that I have determined that redefinition is the final stage is because I have actually done media content analysis with banned films that were considered pornographic or obscene within the last 4 or 5 decades, where you see much, much racier sexual content, not only in cable subscribers, cable subscriber channels, but also on movies, so long as they abide by the rules of the Motion Picture Association of America and apply an appropriate rating and disclaimer warning people of the content of the film. That concludes the breakdown of my theory. Are there any questions? Yes, Pam?
I want to come back to your comment about amateurism.
Yes.
And when you are interpreting material that you're looking at or claims around things like amateurism, how do you know that what says it's amateurism is amateurism, given that you're working through the internet where you have no idea what the conditions or the environment in which images are taken or films are made? So, I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is how do you work through the discourses to determine whether or not you think they're valid discourses in interpreting them?
I've generally actually stuck to people who have come out and publicly admitted that they're amateur pornographers, and I try to focus mainly on those ones because it's their story and it's their interpretation that I've been following, because it is very, very difficult to determine the authenticity of amateur porn. Hardy in 2008 actually discussed that nowadays, the more realistic that pornography is, the more popular it becomes, because people can actually relate to the actors and have an easier time inserting themselves into the fantasy. So this kind of stands to reason that a lot of the stuff that's marketed as amateur is done so to attract a certain niche market. So I tend to stick to people who have come up in the media and have actually admitted and told their story about how they came up as amateurs. Any other questions? Okay, thank you for your time.